today we're going back to the draft because I still have a few of these players that we need to work through. And today we're going towards the end of the draft. We're working our way back. Now we're in the 6th round, and the Lions went with a pass rusher. They selected Ahmed Hassanein. If I'm messing his name up, I apologize. I think that's right, though. When I watch it, I don't hear the game, so I don't know if that's the case. But I think it's Ahmed Hassanein. He started competitive football in 2019 from Egypt. Incredible in CrossFit. I ended up having him as, I think it was my number 22 edge rusher coming into the draft, which, it's not like, he was way up there, but I did like him a lot compared to who was selected at the time. So for a value side, it actually worked out pretty well. And when you watch Ahmed, you get the sense of this looks like a typical Lions defensive end, the versatile defensive end. You're confident if you kick him inside. He's very strong at the point of attack, and his effort is incredible as well. The motor that he brings to the table while also having some athleticism, and his length is not overwhelming. 32.25-inch arm length, 9-inch hands. It's not overwhelming. He didn't test out incredibly well, but it was at a pretty good spot for the most part. The 719 3-cone drill is really nice, as well as the 4.77 40. Now, the 10-yard split was a 1.7 flat, and I think that does show up when you see that first step, but he's super powerful as well, over 20 bench press reps. The shuttle score was solid, so he tested out pretty well. And production-wise, over the past 2 seasons, he's had over 20 sacks. I mean, this past year was 9.5. Year before that was 12.5. And I went through and watching all these games, the one game where it felt like maybe not as impactful was Oregon State. He honestly felt dominant in every single game. That included Penn State to end the season in the college football playoffs. He was very impactful in that game as well. The only game that he didn't feel overwhelmingly impactful was Oregon State toward the end of the season. Outside of that, he was really good. Still get excited about the upside. People will just get excited in general because he hasn't played a lot of competitive football. So it's like, oh man, what could this turn into? And on top of that, there is a good athlete, 6'2", 267 pounds. Let's start with that ability to get off the ball. It ended at an average grade here. That's where I landed. Watching him, the biggest thing here is the get off. The get off timing is not consistent. He feels much more reactive to offensive line movement than he feels to reacting to the snap specifically. Feel that twitchy. His timing isn't incredibly consistent. You don't get a lot of early jumps off the line of scrimmage either when you watch him. The positives that you do get is you get a guy that could really drop his weight. He could drop his pad level off the ball. He's a little bit narrow. Also covers some pretty good stride depth. And especially early in the season, you would recognize some of the sluggishness off the ball. This did feel like it got a touch better, but you could see off that back foot, and you can see there's a good recognition to the offensive tackle set, but it creates a little bit of sluggishness, and it slows him down as he tries to set up these inside-outside moves when he tries to press the tackle. It's just slightly delayed off the ball. It doesn't feel as twitchy. The biggest positive for him is his ability to maintain speed, his ability to be a threat upfield, force guys to open up, force guys to open their hips, some of the discipline that he plays with off the ball, and some of the stride depth that he can carry, and his ability to maintain that speed through the top of the rush as well, with a lower pad level that creates a lot of power. His first step quickness to me actually pops a lot more as a run defender. His ability to quickly get into position, to settle down, create an edge, center himself on blocks, very quick, snatch and releases, quick shed opportunities. A lot of that stems from the quickness into his positioning as a run defender specifically, and you rarely are going to see him get out leveraged in the sense that, say he's on the play side, here comes a wide zone, or maybe it's a toss play, and here comes a polar out that direction. He's going to get out there and cut that off. Now, he may not position himself accurately to actually stack and shed the block and make a play. There's too often where he'll kind of allow himself to get pushed out of the play. He'll get upfield to kind of get pushed out of the play, but he is very reactive to sets. He's very reactive to pass sets. It allows him to play off of that. He can win inside, can win outside, can win through guys. We've seen all of that. Certain players don't really win inside, or they don't really win outside, and you're like, I don't really know where he's going to find this at the next level. He wins in all of those different directions, but it actually pops up a lot more for me as the run defender. And from a burst perspective, where he shows it is the ability to get going. It's the ability to stop, start. It's the contact balance that ties along to it. He's a very powerful player that works through contact really well. So he can stop, start, build up speed very quickly. And again, the quickness into positioning is more so adequate to me, but especially as a run defender, it tends to flash a lot more, and it shows some of that ability to get up the ball and be pretty decisive, but also be very reactive and have just a feel for where he needs to get to very early on the plays. I think it's closer to average in general here, back to the timing, and it's just not a great get off, but its ability to build it up, its ability to stop, start, it's very impactful as a stunt piece. If you use him as a guy that's going to, kind of crash inside or loop inside, he's very impactful there. He doesn't have a lot of wasted movement towards his first step. So to me, it's closer to average. You could kind of give it a slightly above average now, but I'd roll average in that spot here. Now, Here will be the spot that we have to talk about. This is the play strength. He's a very powerful player. I ended up with a great grade here, and I was surprised to get. I got to the point where I was like, should I go higher than this? I mean, is this fair to give him this number? I think he has great play strength. There wasn't a game that he didn't feel ultra powerful, and he's able to unlock it in multiple different ways. But he's incredibly powerful from the hand usage that's tight to his body. Really carries some bend, so it carries a lot of force at the point of attack. Drive that he plays with, it's a consistent leverage that he plays with off the ball. It all carries into a guy that's incredibly powerful at the point of attack, and that's what it is. It's the bent leverage. When you watch him in the contact, he has great leverage. He's got his butt kicked out. He's got great leverage at entry points. Most of the time, he feels like he's winning that battle. He's entering underneath pads, especially when he's dealing with offensive tackles. But even if you kick him in the inside, he has real power in his hips. You see his lower body. It's very well built. He's got a lot of power in the lower body, a lot of power in his hips as well. For jolting, you see him work downhill. We talk about that burst. So when you get him as a stunt piece and he's able to just run downhill, he builds up speed in a hurry. He jolts guys into contact, runs guys over. His long arm move is incredibly impactful as well. He is an absolute force when working downhill. He ties it into the long arm move. He opens up his hips a little bit to be able to create some of that power and maintain it through contact.
You'll notice his speed to power and bull rush entry can either, number one, be a little bit narrow, and it can also get caught upright, which tends to stall it a little bit. But overall, in terms of having contact balance, working through contact, the lower body base, that ability to just keep his feet on the ground and keep driving is very impressive.
He drops his weight in to take on. To me, that all leads to the fact that he has great play strength. He's got an accurate entry at the point of attack. Feet run through contact. He's really tough to deal with. I mean, eventually things just open up for him. Eventually he just gets back there because of some of the power that he plays with. Take on position can be inconsistent. This is where at times he doesn't feel like he's square, as I touched on with his shoulders. He doesn't feel like he's actually in a great place to shed blocks. It feels like it kind of knocks some of his power a little bit there, specifically just some of the inconsistency. But from a base perspective, he typically, especially if it's like hinge blocks, tackle's just trying to seal him on the play, he'll come in with a wide base. He's very quick to get set there. He's constantly shedding those blocks. He's very quick to pop and get off the block, quick disengagement. And you'll see that a lot. If things get a little bit wider, that's where you see inconsistency in terms of the positioning to actually still be a playmaker. Also really strong in his ankles. I think that's a big key to this. He's very strong in the ankles. It creates a lot of contact balance. It's a weird ability to kind of like bend and work through traffic and find creases and create a little bit of slither. It carries from some of the strong ankles that he has. Hacks half-man opportunities like nobody's business.
The ability to maintain speed working half-man opportunities is what flashes.
Speed to power is to just create little openings, get a guy a little bit off balance, and then be able to work his speed through that. And he maintains his speed really well. He's not as sudden or as twitchy at the top of the rush, but he maintains a lot of momentum that he carries. He's a very good momentum rusher that carries it into contact. So overall, he's got great play strength for me. Inside at times, he doesn't always get as low. And it's mainly just some of the fact that, he can't avoid blocks as well when he gets inside. But for the most part, this is a very powerful player. It shows up all the time. That's a great grade for me. That's going to translate really well because at very least, he's going to have that baseline. Like as a rusher, he's powerful. As a run defender, he's incredibly powerful. He's got such jolting, heavy hands at the point of attack. That's going to carry over. Now, the weird part here was as productive as he is and how much he wins against the competition he did, at least this past season, I ended up with closer to an average grade as a rusher. I went slightly above average, but I didn't fall in love with the fact that I think he's going to be a dominant pass rusher, especially early. Some of this, of course, you could just point to, well, yeah, I mean, the guy doesn't have a ton of experience playing competitive football. So there's a lot of growth that we want to see here and that you want to believe in here. But also on top of that, he doesn't feel like he has a dynamic go-to move that's going to be that consistent in the NFL. You may get more of effort wins early, which speaks to a lot of his production, which is perfectly fine. He got a lot of stunt wins. I mean, his first sack, I should say, against Penn State, I mean, it was a stunt rush, right? He kicks inside, loops around. He's not even touched to the quarterback. So you get things like that as well. So overall, I don't think he's going to be like a dominant pass rusher, especially early. I have him a little bit closer to average here, but I ended up giving a slightly above average nod to this. Again, the big thing for me is he's not very sudden. He's more so of a fluid mover, right? That's able to maintain pace and be able to maintain power, but he's not super sudden. You don't get a lot of shake at the top of the rush. He also feels pretty limited in the amount of depth that he can create when he's like stepping inside. So for me, he's just he's a little bit closer to average in that sense. But what I do like, and now here's another big knock, is that he doesn't have a lot of bend to his game. There's not a lot of bend at the top of the rush. He doesn't close the arc that well. He's constantly going to get pushed out of the play. His inability to take advantage of getting a step is a problem. I think it allows for a lot more impact when you put him between the tackles because the closer he is to the center, when he creates a step there, now he's working toward the quarterback on a more straight line path. The wider he is, and he'll play wide 9, he'll kick inside, they'll move him all over the place. But the wider that he is, if he gets a step, it doesn't guarantee that he's actually going to impact the passer. At best, a lot of times he's just pushing the guy to step up in the pocket, but he's not going to close in a lot of those spots because he can't really bend and flatten that much at all. So it leads to a lot of inconsistencies for just finishing off opportunities. And you'll see this as a tackler as well. He's limited bend when he gets into the backfield on run plays. He ends up kind of running by and just sticking out his arms. Sometimes he'll drop his weight a little bit, but that's all you get. You get a lot of plays that kind of get left on the field, which speaks to a lot of like, oh, this is what he's capable of, because there's still a lot of production there, but he can be a little bit more of a player that's a impact piece in the sense of you feel his presence, but he's not actually the guy that's able to make a play outside of effort-wise being able to work his way back into the play, and it makes it really important for his angles to be on point, which can also be hit and miss to the ball. I do like, though, is he's a slippery piece. He does find an ability to create and find creases. This is pretty impressive for a guy at his size. He can find creases. He has an ankle bend to him, which allows him to play with some real body control. I think that there's a good body control within his game, which surprised me. He plays with real body control, second effort success. He has a lot of second effort success as a pass rusher, which is super noticeable at the top of the rush. I'd like to see him tap in this more as a go-to move. He's got a nice little spin that kind of just works off of everything. It's kind of like the third answer, but he tends to try to tie things together. It's just, I would like to see that maybe be more of a go-to move for him based on some of his athleticism, because I think it could give him some more inside wins than just kind of being like the fallback option and bouncing off of blocks. But he's got a little bit of upper body twist. He can make himself difficult to connect with. You'll see this as an ability to shed blocks. The big thing there is it's not just like ability to get skinny, because he tends to be a little bit more of a wide rusher. Instead, more so of his ability to reduce his strike zone. That's something that he's very capable of, and he does that by the setup. He does that with the tempo as a pass rusher, or the setup as a run defender. There's a skill set to being able to reduce your strike zone as a defensive player, and that's something that he does really well, is the way that he presses blocks, the way that he tempos himself off the ball. He does that to a point where he can make it very difficult to get clean punches on him. It can make it very difficult to stall at his rush with a good stab, because he doesn't actually allow those opportunities.
The body control and balance are on full display when you talk about minimizing wasted movement and false movement as a rusher, and that's where you see some of the suddenness to elongate a stride or just change a path of entry.
Now, he can play wide, and that does allow him to get shot with hands. Hands can connect to him, but a lot of times the rep still kind of continues on because he can reduce his strike zone at a pretty good ability. He also has an ability to elongate his footwork upfield. That ability to, at the top of the rush, kind of stride out, that makes him difficult to deal with as well. As much as he's not super sudden or striking as a rusher, he does have an ability to stride out and create depth. And because of some of the fluidity there is at the top of the rush, he can stride out and get guys just a little bit off balance. What I didn't like is you got him against patient offensive tackles, Oregon State, a little bit against Penn State, but against their right tackle, he was giving him all sorts of trouble. For the most part, guys that were able to be patient in their pass sets, they gave him clearly the most trouble because he wasn't getting those guys to overset. And at that point, he wasn't creating obvious angles that he could attack. So instead, you get offensive linemen that were pretty patient into the top of the rush. When they'd open themselves up, they were patient to do that, so they were end up square with his blocks. And that's when he got stalled the most, is when you see he couldn't get guys really off balance. He couldn't get them. It doesn't take a lot for him to overpower players. Even when guys land him cleanly, he still has the ability to, through the rep, just kind of overwhelm players and eventually kind of just shrug them off with a lot of core strength, a lot of power, some looseness there as well that he taps into. But ultimately, patient offensive tackles are going to put him in a spot where he's not going to be able to create those leverage wins, and rushes will stall out. And especially at the NFL level, they'll see that, and that'll happen much more often. Also, the flip side is jump sets can get him in trouble as well. Guys that can attack that upfield shoulder, can jump set, take him out of rhythm very easily or very early, tends to be a problem. The positive here is that he does have that contact balance to kind of stay in the play, continue working. But ultimately, you can take him out of his rush relatively early with some of the jump sets that you can attack him with. Shift that little entry point at the top of the rush. Just be a little bit creative with how he enters into contact, be a little bit shifty. Again, that stride depth kind of comes into play a little bit as well.
You'll see some of the footwork here to maintain speed, tempo the rep, and then also find some slight openings by shifting the entry.
And I also think that he's got more hip looseness. I mean, initially I thought like, this guy's kind of stiff. I don't know if he's going to be opening this up. He doesn't really bend that well at all, but he does have a little bit of hip looseness that should get noticed. I mean, there's a crossover move where he can create some real stride depth here, and there is some looseness that he can tap into at the top of the rush that I feel like is unfairly knocked as like, oh, he's just stiff as a board. Like, yeah, it's noticeable that his plan isn't always as effective. And again, more patient tackles, he's going to have to find a way to be more assertive and more crafty in how he sets up, that entry point at the top of the rush. But in all honesty, he does have some real looseness to his game, which he can tap into. There is some edge looseness to his game that he can work through.
With limited bend through the top of the rush, he's going to win through these half-man opportunities. So as on this play, reducing that strike zone, and then also the speed to power that he can showcase.
And create opportunities at the top of the rush and continue working. So I do think that deserves a little bit of love. And again, the leg drive is incredibly noticeable to just work over blocks. I mean, the long arm move, the ability to kind of just press guys out of the way and then find an inside rush. Like, he's incredibly powerful through his legs, and he's incredibly powerful within that step through.
Ahmed offers a very smooth path of entry, and it's just those sudden changes at the top of the rush that creates the suddenness that he has.
A little bit of that lean to find creases, and it's very awkward, and not awkward, but it's very awkward positions that he'll get himself in, where he's able to find a way to kind of create like a unnatural slither where he can kind of bounce from block to block, and you're like, hey, that's pretty impressive body control. I think that's a good ability in his game. The body control for a guy that's 270 essentially is incredible. Like, I didn't expect to see that, but he can start to tap into that and then start to pinball himself to the quarterback. And while it just feels a little bit more free flowing, it doesn't feel very structured. It's like, I'm not really sure what his plan is here.
A predictable entry path can also tend to be an issue. Some of the lack of suddenness and twitch can add to this issue as well, but then maybe in some of the lack of creativity, you'll see that he can be a little bit predictable at times entering into contact.
A lot of times he doesn't feel like he has a great go-to plan, but he is able to just find a way to kind of work through traffic because of some of that body control.
His short area body control flashes that ability to recognize sets quickly and be able to play off of them, and then go run to pass transitions very quickly. Play the run to rushing the passer.
His hand usage has to be better because he has to be more precise with how he rushes. Right now, again, it feels more free-flowing. It doesn't feel as precise. That's going to have to clean up because he's going to have to open that up to be more consistent as a rusher. Now, speaking of that, let's get to the hand usage. I think it's slightly below average. I felt like I could have went a little bit lower with this grade as well. His hand usage can be effective. And the positive here, the biggest positive, is he's got very heavy hands. He's got a lot of shock in his hands. He does a really good job playing with tight hands on entry and his punches to create a lot of punch. I mean, there is a lot of knockback when he initially enters contact. So there's a lot of things there, and he also has some variety to his game as well. It's not like he doesn't have things he can tap into, and he also can make, again, he can reduce the strike zone. He can work overarm moves. He can get over top of blocks, and there's plenty of variety to it, and he tends to try to connect one thing to the next. It's right. It's not like, okay, I threw one move and that's it. And I remember talking about this when we initially drafted him, and it still stayed the same after watching every game, is he does tend to connect things together. He tends to connect different pass rush opportunities together to find a way to find success. But overall, just the effectiveness isn't to the level that it's going to have to be at, and it's not as sound as it's going to need to be at to be as consistent. Connect the swipe move into the rip move. So when guys try to create punches, he can kind of uplift some of those arm attempts because he'll drop his weight, he'll drop his shoulder, he'll create some upper body twist, and he can kind of uplift some of those punch attempts as well. He also has a nice little swim move that carries a lot of speed. The speed through his swim move with the elongated strides, as well as some of the looseness there as well. Like, you can create a lot of speed through some of the swim move attempts as well, and that creates an opportunity to disengage from blocks. The problem is that he doesn't always feel connected with his footwork, right? It doesn't always feel that dialed in and connected together. It's not overly sudden as well. You'll also see tight ends tend to give him way too many problems off the ball, right? They can kind of squeeze his rushes, and then you just don't feel as much impact. The push-pull needs to be much better. The inaccurate entry can be a problem as well, where he'll shoot his hands, and you can see that, like, one hand gets contact, the other one tends to slide all over the place, and it just doesn't feel like as accurate it's going to have to be. It's just not as precise and not as crisp as it's going to have to be in the NFL. You would expect for him to find success there. I love the long arm move that he can tap into because he's not overly long, but he does it within his hips. He kind of drives everything into it. He creates a long arm move when he gets you off balance, and it's super powerful, and it doesn't stop, and it doesn't stall, and it just continues. Inside moves, the hand usage also has to become a lot more crisp here. When you'll see those two-handed swipes, they're not nearly as effective as they need to be, and he also stamps into that lateral agility in terms of range isn't great either, so he doesn't cover a lot of depth when he's kind of sidestepping blocks when he's working back inside. So his hand usage has to be more effective in actually getting blocks off him. I do like how he has the ability to just kind of push offensive linemen around in the sense that he can kind of get on your shoulder and tap this with some of his inside moves and kind of just push guys over. He can get on their sides and move them. He's just that powerful within his game.
The go-to connected move tends to be to rip through to finish, and I do love it with the core strength, and then also the way that he can stride out through that crossover move to create a ton of depth.
So again, can leave his body a little bit open to get punched. I think he's a little bit too late with his hands too. Like, certain guys have fast hands. He could play with that off the ball in terms of run sets where he's ready, he's locked to get a good punch, but his hands tend to be just a little bit delayed in terms of he can expect it and then it's not as effective. On the flip side, if he's not expecting and anticipating an early move, he just isn't that fast with his hands. So it tends to just kind of get him knocked first off, and then he's trying to disengage. It doesn't feel like he's constantly proactive or beating an offensive tackle to their punching spots. He does have a little bit of variety in the sense that there's like a little bit of a ghost move that he's tapped into where he can anticipate and kind of show and like, all right, I'm going to just dip underneath here. So I love the variety that he plays with. There's a lot of variety to work with. It's just everything feels like it has to get more consistent to find real success there at the next level more consistently. But he does create that powerful punch. It's just we need more consistency with his hands. So to me, it's slightly below average right now because there's a lot of variety and they are very powerful. The biggest surprise for me was this ability to shed. I almost feel like every single game I watched, nobody could stick with him longer than a second. Like, I mean, it was so quick, the ability to get off a block and consistently shed. I can remember the opportunities where he couldn't get off a block cleanly, and those were so rare. It felt expected that he was going to shed a block and get off a block very quickly. I think he's very good in this category. Again, you want more precision at the next level for consistency, but he's going to be a handful to deal with because he's so powerful, because his ability to second effort get off of blocks, he's going to be a handful to deal with, where as long as he's just disciplined and he takes on blocks squarely, or he gets himself in a position to keep himself and his shoulders clean, right? That way he's not just running himself out of place. As long as he positions himself better, he's going to have a really good ability to get off of blocks. He can reduce the strike zone, as I talked about, which just makes it a little bit difficult to actually latch him cleanly. He's coming his direction. He'll drop his weight, keep that outside shoulder clean. He'll just run a ram through half-man opportunities, and he'll just hold guys at the line of scrimmage. That tends to be incredibly impressive as well. I don't like how he ducks his head. He tends to have hit-and-miss vision. Like when he put Ahmed into the backfield, his vision tends to be very inconsistent. I remember earlier really liking his discipline. I definitely pulled back on that. I ended up, I think, with a below-average grade here in terms of slightly below-average grade in terms of the discipline. Ultimately, he just doesn't find the ball that well behind the line of scrimmage, and I think that he can duck his head a little bit into injury, which also tends to lead him to not being able to find the football through contact. So that's a problem. He's very instinctual in the fact that he gets out quickly. He's very reactive. He just doesn't always know where the ball is, it feels like, through contact, which, again, technically speaking, can be cleaned up, no doubt, at the next level. He has the looseness, though, in his hips to separate from blocks. He has the core power to jerk blocks around. Also can get a little bit skinny, but he also can run through contact. His feet are very active through contact. They're very quick into those entry points. He's wide. It's very quick, so it's like a punch and disengage, and it's very quick through that process to get off of blocks. I love that specifically when he sets that wide base at the point of attack, which he typically does. He also plays with that quick punch and release move, as I talked about, an effective push-pull move as well. That if he could just dial in the hand placement more consistently, that's a very effective move to at very least get an edge consistently. I don't see him as a guy that constantly plays like two-gap opportunities that well. He's much more of a guy that's going to play his single gap and then just kind of work through it. But in terms of being able to take on blocks and kind of stack and shed and hold, move guys around, he doesn't really play with that technique right now. Like, for example, pullers will come around, he'll step inside and just kind of dive inside. He does a lot of that. He doesn't play multiple gaps. He kind of plays more so one gap. He has that lockout ability to lose balance a little bit because he doesn't position incredibly well all the time. He gets caught jumping inside with pullers. When offensive tackle overset, that can be a problem as well for him because like hinge blocks, things like that, he'll just allow himself to get pushed
biggest
upfield
positive for me when working tight to the line of scrimmage like this is him keeping his shoulders square to the line of scrimmage. It does allow him to redirect and still create power to take on blocks when they work his direction. So he plays square, and you're going to see that he will hold out and maintain his gap.
It's a very good grade right now, but it could be really good. Like, that's the area where I think you could have fell in love, and you're like, man, what we could turn into is his ability to be dominant against the run. It's there. Right? Remember Josh Pascal? He was just so leveraged off the ball. You get some of that here. You get some real leverage. He typically enters into contact very square. He's very quick in the placement, and then he's going to enter blocks backside or front side. I mean, he gets very square into his entry, except for when things kind of spread out. So as long as that's more consistent, he's going to be a handful to deal with in these spots. And he has more than enough willingness to do it, more than enough second effort to do it, and more than enough quickness and length and power to do it. And then finally, some of the agility. To me, his agility was closer to average ultimately when going through every game. I didn't love it as much as I did initially in some of the short sample size that I saw, but what I think I took away was the body control is much more impressive here because that short area body control is super noticeable. He can kind of get sideways and keep working upfield. That's all noticeable. His body control is what stands out for a guy at his size, right? That control to respond to screen, stop, start, get back into the play, chase something down, the effort that he plays with. He's tracking dudes down on screen. He can get across the entire field, right? That's the kind of thing that tends to stand out when you watch Ahmed as a mover. He does share the foot quickness at the top of the rush, which is very noticeable. Top of the rush, he gets very quick with his feet, and that's where he gives guys problems is because if he can give you the illusion that he's getting upfield, and he can show you that, okay, I'm going to open this up a little bit. That's where his foot quickness tends to come into play, and that's where he can be a little bit difficult to deal with, and he can get an edge, and then he can press upfield, especially when he gets inside. He's very powerful, so once he starts working upfield, I mean, he's just bouncing off of blocks. It's not as precise to bend and kind of slip him and like, oh, that's clean. Now he's going to get a sack, but he is going to create disruption. He can create disruption in that sense. That foot quickness, top of the rush, that short area quickness is incredibly noticeable, and even entry into run blocks as well, because his feet keep running. His feet keep running with his hand usage. He maintains speed really well at the top of the rush as well. He just doesn't have a lot of lateral shake. There's not a lot of herky jerkiness. There's not a lot of suddenness. There's not a lot of shake at the top of the rush. He doesn't cover that much depth inside, outside. You just don't feel that as much. It's more fluid. He can cross over with his hips, right? He can cross over the top of the rush when he's working outside, and he can recognize early, like, oh, I got an inside opportunity. I'm going to get there. But if it's not like a gaping opportunity, when margins get smaller, he has to be more precise. And to me, he doesn't have some of the just all-time, like, oh, agility, oh, he's sudden, he's boom, boom. He doesn't have that. I think this is where you put him inside, it becomes even better. His agility shines a little bit more. His ability to just like get an edge and be more impactful shines even more. You put him inside early. I remember I wrote this down. Coming into the draft, I wrote this down as one of my takeaways early was like, yo, if you put him between the tackles, you're going to get early production as a rusher. And I still truly believe that walking back today. I still believe that's the case with his game. Maybe a little bit more I can add to it in terms of why, but I do believe that that's going to be the case even today as he kind of works everything else out. But he can definitely play across the line of scrimmage. There's no doubt about that. Ability to pursue the ball is noticeable. His feet can also get cut out, like cut blocks. He doesn't really deal with those that well. He tends to get kind of taken out of the play. Lateral agility is a little bit limited in terms of the true range that he can create. Turns into kind of a guy that's just running upfield a little bit more than anything here. But that short area ability to gather is super noticeable. He can build up speed, so you get him on stunts, you get him looping back inside. He's a problem when he gets downhill, and he's very, very good with his footwork too, not overly complicated. He doesn't like just kind of get caught dancing, right? He really minimizes his footwork, and he does a really nice job of kind of maximizing where he's getting to without just dancing in kind of the same spot, like I think of a basketball player in that sense. And to kind of just wrap this all together, to me, the discipline early tends to be a little bit of a problem. He crashes down pretty aggressively. He plays flat to the line pretty aggressively. Again, that's a great aspect because he does his job. He could just be a little bit overly aggressive, to be honest with you, and that pulls him out of place to actually make a play. So guys can hit him with bootlegs where it's like, all right, you're doing your job, but things are going to get outside here, and that will absolutely happen. A really good closing burst. He's a rangy finisher in a straight line. I love him as a tackler. He's a great tackler. He runs his legs. He tackles with really nice technique. I think he's got a good tackling ability right now. It's just that he doesn't drop his weight that well. So when he's blocked, he doesn't drop and kind of make tackles that well, like through blocks. But if he is in space, he does run through his tackles. He runs through downhill tackle attempts really well. He just will run by tackles as well. And unfortunately, some of that just feels like some limitations. So I ended up giving him a good grade in terms of his tackling ability. It's a little bit too steep on backside runs, and he will lose the ball behind the line of scrimmage. But I do like how he squeezes the ball specifically and squeezes the line of scrimmage. And you can get him downfield and have him be effective. And he's very quick to his spots. So ultimately here for me with Ahmed, I think he's a little bit more average in terms of his get off. I think he's got great play strength that can continue to be worked in a lot of different ways. I think he's closer to average as a pass rusher. I gave him a slightly above average, but you could probably put him more so average here. I think his shed ability is what you'll buy into long term. I think that's very good. His hand usage needs to be much more precise, though he has a lot of the tools in the tool bag right now. His body control is very good for a guy at his size, but it's good in general. That's probably the biggest takeaway of something that you can build off of. His agility is closer to average, but that's still fine. He's got adequate agility. I can take that. He tackles at a good level because of his form. It's just, and he's a powerful player, and he's a thumper, and he doesn't allow leakage. It's just that he will absolutely just miss tackles that can be a little bit limited. But I think he's a smart player. His discipline, to me, can just be a little bit slightly below average. He gets a little bit ahead of himself, just tacks downhill. And he doesn't really see everything that's happening, and it puts him in bad spots where it's like, okay, I get that you kind of did your job, but you pulled yourself out of the play because he's a smart player, but his discipline can be a little shaky. His motor is incredible. I mean, it is close to an elite motor that he plays with, and he's a very tough player. He's got great toughness as well. I think Ahmed, year one, there's things that need to be worked on, but you kick him inside, you're going to have some more early success. It's just long-term. The ability to play blocks, be a three-down player, that's what's on the table for Ahmed. Can he become a little bit more precise with how he rushes the quarterback? Can he develop more of a go-to move? Can he add a little bit more of a swim move? And then how often and how impactful can we actually create his power, his speed of power? Because the way that he won is very capable when you get guys off balance, or you have an outside threat, or you just have someone that's going to take some attention. And he's a great stunt rusher. He's going to collapse things. He's going to open guys up really well, right? You can kind of crash him down and loot someone outside of it. He's going to be a great team player in that sense. But where can we find go-to moves? That's going to be the question. So Ahmed, welcome to the squad. Pick number 196. Super pumped to have him. He fits the Lions and how they play perfectly. And I think that in time, we're going to love this draft pick. But early on, he's going to make his presence felt. I think in the preseason, he could be really good because he's going to be playing backup tackles. He could be very noticeable there. He could overwhelm guys, but specifically, he's going to make his presence felt as a run defender very quickly.